All right, let's just get straight into it. We all know that sinking feeling, right? Bringing up a safety issue at work can be incredibly daunting. Nobody wants to be labeled a troublemaker, and literally, no one wants to risk their livelihood just for speaking up. So today, we're going to break down the critical federal regulations that actually have your back. We're going to take all that dense, bureaucratic legal text and translate it into plain, practical English. By the end of this overview, you'll know exactly where you stand, what your rights are, and most importantly, how to actually use them. Picture this. You've noticed a sparking wire, a blocked fire exit, or maybe a dangerous lack of safety gear on a project, but you just kept quiet because you were terrified of getting fired. Sound familiar? That fear is completely valid, and honestly, it's incredibly common. But here is the core concept we're exploring today. Federal law specifically explicitly protects you from ever having to make that impossible choice between your physical safety and your paycheck. No one should have to choose between going home in one piece and keeping their job. So here's our game plan for today's explainer. We'll start with the basics of workplace safety and retaliation. Then we'll look at who is actually covered and exactly what actions are protected. After that, we'll dive into the right to refuse dangerous work, the mechanics of filing a retaliation claim, and finally, why focusing on compliance literally protects everyone in the building.
Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, Workplace Safety and Retaliation. Let's lay down the absolute basics.
Let's define retaliation in real, everyday economic terms. If we strip away all the legal jargon, retaliation basically means an employer is punishing you. And that punishment could look like a lot of things. Getting fired, sure, but also getting your hours slashed, being stuck with the absolute worst shifts, or getting an unearned demotion. And why? Simply because you tried to keep yourself or your team safe. Well, the law makes it crystal clear. No person and no organization is allowed to punish a worker for exercising their legal safety rights.
Moving right along to Section 2, who is actually covered? Let's clear up some common misconceptions here.
You might be surprised by this, but the true reach of the law is way broader than most people assume. You actually don't even have to be a formally hired employee to be protected. Job applicants? Yep, they're shielded too. Basically, if the economic reality of your situation means you're functioning as an employee, you are covered. You cannot be denied a job just because you showed a concern for safety. And on the flip side, it's not just your direct manager who's held accountable. Labor unions, temp agencies, really anyone in a position to discriminate against you can be held legally liable.
Okay, this next part is massive. It's called the but-for rule. Let's say you complain about a safety issue, and suddenly your boss fires you, claiming it's because you took too long on your lunch break last week. Well, the law looks at whether your safety complaint was the actual tipping point. If your employer wouldn't have taken that negative action against you but for your safety complaint, boom, they've broken the law. Your safety concern doesn't have to be the only reason they fired you, it just has to be the decisive one.
Which brings us to Section 3. What actions are protected? Let's talk about day-to-day behaviors.
So obviously, if you sit down and file a massive formal written complaint with a federal agency, you are protected. But, and this is absolutely crucial, simply pulling your manager aside to casually point out a broken machine or a slippery floor, assuming you're doing it in good faith, that is just as legally protected as calling in a federal inspector, testifying at a hearing, helping out with an internal investigation, or asking for an official safety inspection. All of that guarantees you protection against retaliation.
Now, a quick reality check here. We really need to clarify a boundary. While the law vigorously protects you for speaking up, it is absolutely not a free pass to ignore valid safety protocols yourself. You can't just refuse to wear your safety goggles, blatantly violate established company rules, and then cry retaliation when management disciplines you for it. That's a super vital distinction for everyday workplace compliance. You still have to do your part.
All right, Section 4, the right to refuse work. This is honestly the grayest area of the whole shebang. Here's the baseline expectation. You generally cannot just drop your tools and storm off a job site the absolute second you perceive a hazard. Standard procedure always requires you to try and get the issue fixed through normal reporting channels first. The law heavily prefers that you give your employer a fair chance to actually correct a problem once it's brought to their attention. But what if it's an extreme situation? Well, there is a very specific emergency exception. If you are literally faced with a choice between doing your assigned task and suffering severe injury or death, you can legally refuse the work. But you have to strictly follow 3 steps, all in good faith. First, the danger of death or severe harm has to be real and immediate. Second, the situation has to be so incredibly urgent that there is simply zero time to call in the authorities to handle it.
And third, whenever possible, you must have asked your employer to fix the hazard first and they outright refused. If you meet all those criteria, the law has your back.
Section 5. Filing a retaliation claim. Let's look at what happens when things actually go wrong.
This part moves incredibly fast, so let's map out the timeline. Day 0 is when the retaliation actually happens, like the day you get wrongfully fired or demoted. From that exact moment, the clock starts ticking. You only have 30 days to formally file your claim with the regional authority. Now, there's no fancy, specific form required. You just need to get it officially filed. Once you do, the government agency sets a target to notify you of their decision within 90 days.
I really need to hammer this number home. 30. 30 days. For federal bureaucracy, that is a remarkably tight deadline. If you wait longer than 30 days to file your grievance, you are almost certainly going to lose your right to any relief. Now sure, there are extremely rare extenuating exceptions, like if your employer actively lied to you to cover up the real reason they fired you, but generally speaking, time is absolutely of the essence. You have to act fast.
Finally, Section 6. Why compliance protects everyone. Let's zoom out to the big picture here.
So, what actually happens to a company that breaks these rules? If an investigation proves a business retaliated against a worker, the federal government can drag them into district court. And the penalties? They have serious teeth. Federal judges can order the company to immediately stop the discriminatory behavior. They can literally force them to give the employee their job back. And they can compel them to pay back every single dollar of wages that worker lost. It proves that these regulations aren't just polite suggestions, they are strictly enforced laws designed to protect your livelihood.
So that leaves us with one pretty massive question. Are you building a culture of silence or a culture of safety? Embracing these rules shouldn't just be about playing legal defense or dodging federal penalties. Think about it. When employees know their rights and intrinsically trust that they won't be punished for speaking up, that is the literal foundation of a healthy, productive, and genuinely safe workplace. Because at the end of the day, it's about ensuring everyone gets to go home in one piece. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Take this knowledge, use it to empower yourself and your team, and I will catch you in the next one.
If you found this helpful or want to stay updated when this regulation changes, subscribe and support the channel. And if you need the full technical details on this CFR, click the link in the description below. See you next time.